Be Angela.
I believe I'll address this question to Mr. Ferrucci. More than half of Connecticut families heat their homes with oil. Based on predictions from the U.S. Department of Energy, families in the Northeast will pay an average increase of 6.3% this season. According to Channel 3 viewers who submitted questions via email for this debate, this is a critical issue. As Senator, what will your efforts be to address these families' needs?
First, I would like to see us move towards alternative powers, because we can keep going in the direction we are now, and eventually oil is going to run out. We need to move towards solar and wind power and other alternatives for cars. Second, as a short term, I would like to see us start regulating the oil and energy industries like we used to regulate the energy industry. Deregulation has allowed the energy industry to up their prices, and the oil industry does that also. They keep upping their prices. They made billions and billions of dollars during natural disasters. We need to regulate the oil industry and allow people to be able to fuel their homes and their vehicles. Otherwise, most people won't be able to go to work or will freeze in the winter.
All right, Senator.
Thanks, Bob. This is an outrage in an oil market internationally that bears no resemblance to the normal rules of supply and demand. People are being cheated. I say that as bluntly as I can, and I've tried from my days as Attorney General and now as United States Senator to do something about it. Last December, in the midst of the last home heating oil season, I submitted legislation that would have imposed a 50% excess profits tax on oil companies for really undeserved profits and return that money to low and middle income consumers to help them pay those bills. But in the long run, we've got to break our dependence on foreign oil from foreign countries that are unstable or hostile to us. The energy bill that was adopted last year is criticized for one part. It has the most substantial incentives for energy conservation and alternative energy Congress has ever adopted. I'm now co-sponsoring with Democrats and Republicans another bill called Set America Free, which will reduce our use of oil by 10 million barrels a day.
Right.
The oil companies may not like it,
up, Senator.
but it's in our national
All right, Mr. Schlesinger.
You know, in all due respect, Joe, we've been there, done that, tried that, and last time we did, our interest rates went to 14%. You couldn't get a mortgage. As I remember, the oil prices skyrocketed. It just didn't work. And if you remember, President Reagan repealed that gross earnings tax and, or whatever you want to call it, excess profits tax. And immediately, the prices of oil fell to a 20-year low and stayed there for about 20 years. So that's not the solution. The solution is we have to now accept the fact we're moving from fossil fuel to eventually solar. We're in probably a 30, 40, 50-year transition process. And we have to put incentives into alternative fuel sources. I call it my declaration of energy independence. And what we do with this is that we put incentives into the alternatives, and we have a two-tier process for profits of oil companies, one for fossil fuels, which is a higher tax, and one for alternatives. That way, you direct your funds where they're needed, and you get results.
All right, Mr. Lamont.
Look, after 9/11, there was an extraordinary outburst of civic obligation here in the United States of America. And there was a sense that people were ready to do the right thing when it came to energy independence and the environment. And instead, Dick Cheney invited 100 of his favorite energy CEOs and lobbyists behind closed doors, and they passed a bill called the Energy Bill. That was a bill that provided billions of dollars of subsidies to ExxonMobil, but did nothing to start weaning us from our dependence upon oil. Did nothing in terms of fuel economy standards, nothing in terms of conservation that will reduce our need. Look what we did back in the 1970s and 1980s. We doubled the fleet mileage standard of our automobiles. That had a dramatic impact, not only in terms of the environment, but also in terms of gas prices. Senator Lieberman was one of the only New England senators to sign on to that bill. It was a bad bill. Front and center to deal with energy prices, we got to start reducing our dependence upon oil. And we have a new plan in place to allow for incentives and conservation to allow that to happen.
All right, Mr. Nibbs.
Start with tax credits for alternative energy, for solar, biodiesel, whatever it may be. And the one energy source that I have not heard discussed is nuclear. Europe, most of Europe, which is considered by most to be more liberal than us, uses much more nuclear than we do. It is a much safer alternative than it was 30 years ago. And we will not completely break our dependence on foreign oil or on oil in general until we come up with something that is sustainable, such as using more nuclear. I also think that we should allow drilling in the Arctic and more offshore drilling, but only as part of a comprehensive plan. If we just do those things on their own, they don't solve the problem. But we can use those things to help bridge the gap until we come up with better alternative sources of energy for autos and homes and electricity.
All right, second round here, Mr. Ferrucci.
It's not a new thing for alternative power in vehicles. The diesel engine is about 100 years old. It was designed to run off of peanut oil, not petroleum oil. I know this, I was a mechanic for a while. And a lot of people are converting their vehicles over. There's no reason we can't move now on alternatives for vehicles, ethanol 85% ethanol, 15% petroleum. We could start growing our own fuels in the Midwest instead of from the Middle East.
All right, Senator Lieberman.
Bob, there's been no greater failure of leadership in our government over the last 30 years than the failure to do something about our dependence on foreign oil and foreign countries for that oil. I've worked very hard to try to break through. We've made some progress, but I worked very hard last year on the Set America Free Act, putting together a bipartisan coalition of 12 senators from Barack Obama to Jeff Sessions of Alabama. It would reduce by 10 million barrels a day. It would develop an American biofuels refinery distribution network.
Time's up.
We can do it.
All right, Ms. Schlesinger.
I can't believe this, Ned. I finally agree with you on something. But I would have voted against that bill for an entirely different reason, and that is because my friends who live on the coast, that bill included Broadwater, a three-mile, basically, platform in the middle of Long Island Sound that's going to be a fuel depot for natural gas. We can't have it, and that right there would veto the bill for me, and that's why I wouldn't have supported it. But I am the only one up here that asked for a suspension during the driving months of the federal gas tax, and I asked the state to look at also a state suspension. And
Time's
Mr.
up.
Lieberman did not act.
All right, Mr. Lamont.
The real problem with that energy bill was, along with those production incentives, that was the time to put fuel economy standards. That was the time to put efficiency standards. That was the time to put together a comprehensive energy plan that would have meant real energy independence and brought down the price of gasoline. And for Senator Lieberman to have signed on to that bill, we lost that opportunity. Now there are new efforts in place. And as Alan pointed out, it does also facilitate industrialization of Long Island Sound, that energy bill. Provides for something the size of Queen Mary in an LNG facility. That should stop.
All right. Mr. Nips.
Artificially lowering the gas tax for a period of time to artificially lower the price of gas will only drive up consumption and in the long term raise the cost of gasoline because there will be more consumption. The CAFE standards in cars have been stagnant, but one of the problems with them is most of the way that they've raised the CAFE standards in their automobiles is they've made them lighter and a lot of times less safe. And the problem with ethanol is they don't take into consideration the cost and the energy that it comes to produce it.
Time's up.